Welcome back to GDK Retro. Today we're looking at a third-party NES joystick. Most of the time most people use the regular controllers, but they did make a couple of different joysticks. This one was made by a third-party, Recoton, I guess that's how you pronounce it. Looks like they made a bunch of different third-party devices, some cleaners and controllers and that sort of thing. Already a step ahead on this one that you can see it disassembled. It didn't come that way. When we did receive it, plugged it into the NES, didn't get anything, wasn't working at all. When we brought it back to the desk here to clean, did notice here that this was actually all covered in electrical tape across here. How good of a job, I couldn't tell you, inside. So we pulled it all apart and just retwisted all the wires, as you can see on here, individually. With retwisting them and just testing it quickly that way, the controller actually does completely work. So it was probably just a bad connection job in here that at least one of these wires wasn't making contact. So what we're going to do a little later in this video is we're going to go through solder and then heat shrink each of these cords in here to make sure that's a proper connection. Heat shrink the whole cord. Now, the better thing, especially since this thing has such a tiny cord, would probably be to do an all-out replacement on the actual cord itself. And I was considering that. I might have a donor NES controller I could use for it. That may be a later project. The one thing that is turning me down from doing that is with this here. I did find the one screw, I think it was up here, that was holding it in and trying to remove the board, and it doesn't want to remove. This is one of the, I guess you see it with the cheaper stuff often too. If you look in areas like this around here, and I think there was a couple, I think there's one down under here too, in a couple of spots, what they ended up doing was to keep this board in place rather than screwing it down. What they would actually do is that peg will come up through and then they sort of melt it down on top. Is this fixable? Yes. Could you very carefully Dremel this out to be able to pull the board up and everything? You probably could. But in this case, with most of the wires on this one actually running underneath, that sort of stuff, it'd be a lot of work to take this out and potentially damaging the board. And at that point, with only one mount point, would it mount and stay secure enough? So that may be a later project for what it is. For right now, I believe we're just going to do a good repair job on the cord. And then the second part comes down to this. The way this one controller works, much like the other ones, it's usually a button works by making contact. So if I can get it out closer here, the joystick itself works. Whoops, let's not pop it right off. By when this leans over, it makes contact with this metal pad on the little metal pad down below. So that's great. Those will work relatively fine all by themselves. The issue comes down to the buttons. There's one on the top, A and B, I'm not sure, I can't remember which one's which. I think this one's A and B, and then these are your start and select buttons. Again, just really poor design for cheap product. Let me grab this one because this one's already peeled up. The way this makes contact is, if I can peel it up here, there's a little silver plate taped, literally taped, just masking tape, not even masking tape, scotch taped, and that completes the circuit. It just bridges, if you can see on there, if I can get the right angle, there's an inner circle and an outer circle, and it just bridges that and completes the circuit. That literally just is taped on top, a little piece of foam, and then your button itself was just sitting on top of the foam. That's it. Really a little bit of a hokey sort of setup. So I think what we're going to do, take the tape off, take this foam off, give it a good cleaning. And then what I'm going to try and do is I may see if with this little pad, if I can just, with a little tack of solder, tack it to the bottom of the spring itself, just so it holds on to it and keeps it in place. Because the buttons themselves will stay in place when they're being held by the plastic case, but that'll hopefully keep the little metal piece from shifting around, and then can be depressed by the little peg in there. So it's just going to be a little bit clean and try and see if that works as a repair in this way. I mean, worst case is we could always just use a piece of electrical tape or something on it, but I'd rather do something a little more better that should have been done in the first place. So first step will be to repair these wires. Again, take them apart, get some heat shrink ready on it, solder each of the wires individually, heat shrink it, make it look a little bit more presentable. Welcome back. We're going to start trying to solder these wires together to make them more permanent connection. We picked up this little what they call helping hands type unit just to hold the wires together. Makes it a little easier if we're doing some finer things like this when you need more than one set of hands to work on stuff. Have some larger heat shrink wrap ready to go on here, which will go over the whole unit. But also picked up as well some much smaller heat shrink as well. Just going to shrink each of these over top just to make sure that none of them do touch each other, and then the larger heat shrink over the whole thing. So for each of these we need to get the heat shrink on first before we solder the wire. I tried to color code where I can. Unfortunately I didn't have all the colors, so some of these will have to be a little off colored. Get the heat shrink on. So I'm going to trim that heat shrink just a little bit. It's a little too long. There we go. That's more better. And on top of soldering, I am going to twist those together just to ensure, again, a better seal on it. So 2 wires are twisted together. Get our soldering iron. There we go. That one's completed. Give it a second to cool down. Fold it out of the way. Heat shrink goes over top, and then we'll heat that to ensure that it shrinks. Before we do the heat shrink, once we've done all these wires, I am going to go test it just to make sure that everything is still working at that point. The last one across. We're just going to take it over to our NES, give it a test, just make sure everything is working, and then we'll be right back. Alrighty, well, as you can see, my table's a little different now. There's actually been quite a gap between this video and the last one, and unfortunately in that gap I've somehow lost the footage of me trying to solder the spring onto the little, I guess you could say, not elastic, but pad that clicks, and it didn't work at all. This doesn't seem to take the solder at all, so I guess we're going to have to go back to the old-fashioned route and just do this exactly as they did it initially, and just tape them on, and hopefully that should keep everything at least secure, at least as much as it was before. So at this point it's going to be try to reassemble everything and get everything back together, and then we'll go test it. Alright, so this may be the interesting part. Okay. So we need that right in the reflective spot on the camera. There we go. So, got the little pad on there. Now we got to try and affix some tape to hold it down. So that's too big. So you want to get it as close to the center as possible. Now that it's stuck on there, hopefully I can reposition it a little bit. Looks like it's mostly staying. The trick is you got to get it onto part of like the PCB where it will actually stick to, compared to it won't stick like where those solder pins are all coming up. But let's get another one. Yeah, always make sure you have them the right way. You don't want them, they got to be domed upwards. So the top of it presses downwards. If it's the other way, it's not going to do any good. Either that or it'll just always press the button in. And this isn't a preferred way to doing it, but again, this is why this was such a cheap manufactured controller to begin with. But it's still a good lesson in how to fix okay, one button, two buttons, three buttons, and the fourth. Just need to get a little piece of tape over here. Okay, then we have our top button. Gotta find the. Alrighty. Move the this out of the way for the moment. Okay, so that's pretty much it. So now it's just reassembling everything, putting it back together, and we will see if it works. Alrighty, so that's everything assembled. Now, time to go test. Okay, so here we go. We have the joystick plugged into the Nintendo. Let's turn it on. And we have Super Mario Brothers Duck Hunt. As you can see, selecting up and down changes the inputs. Let's turn the volume down a little bit. Okay, so let's give it a test. This settle. There we go. Oh, that button. Whoops. Actually, we don't want Duck Hunt. Oh, that's Super Mario Brothers. Okay, so hitting select. Yep, select works. Hitting start. That works. Left, right works. I can do this without dying. Joystick's definitely not the easiest thing to play Super Mario Brothers on. Can I not fall in the pit? There we go. Just want to get this tested so I can test the B button as well. Yep, he throws fireballs. I think we're good to go. So all in all, yeah, that was a successful clean and repair of this no-name bargain joystick. Again, sometimes just cleaning inside, that sort of thing's all you need. And we went through how to do a cable repair. Again, some vary from others on how you can do this. Better case in this place would have been to completely replace the cable. You would have wanted to get like an extension cord or another broken controller and use the cord from that. But the way this was inside, you were never gotten without pretty much destroying at it. So repairing it was the way to go on this one. But all in all, a successful repair and something to add to the collection. Thank you all for watching, and see you next time.